Hello, hello, hello. This is Adrienne Berg, and this is the Ageless Traveler. And I think it's because it's the very beginning of the new year. I want to do something new and different that'll really change the way you travel. And today we're talking about becoming an adventurer or doubling down if you're already an adventurer. We're going to take about 10 different adventurous journeys together today. And we're going to meet some ordinary folks. Well, they're not so ordinary because they've become adventurers, and you'll hear what they have to say about it. Now, there's many kind of adventurers, but what kind are there? Well, I'll tell you one kind that there are not. And those are folks that have regrets. Adventurers do not have regrets. Let me quote the very famous, the very prescient Mark Twain. Did you know that he was a travel writer? He actually made more money and sold more travel books than he did his great novels. Here's what Mark Twain has said. 20 years from now, you'll be more disappointed by the things you did not do than by the ones you did do. So throw off the bowlines, sail away from the safe harbor, catch the trade winds in your sails, explore, dream, discover. Now, don't worry, when you're on vacation, everything seems less risky. Think about it. Have you ever zip-lined or climbed to a height you never expected and something you'd never do at home? Because you're on vacation? Well, I bet you have, and there's a reason for that. It's all about your brain chemistry on vacation. Novel environments actually change your brain circuitry. Some of that rewiring lasts after you get home. So if you don't see yourself, as I didn't, as much of an adventurer, it can really stick if you try some new things while on vacation. Now, that happened to me, and I'm going to tell you a little story about it, and I'm going to let you hear exactly what happened in real time. This is what happened. I was on a princess cruise to Greenland. And I did expect that it was going to be very exciting and very nice and very beautiful. But what I didn't expect was that I would become an adventurer on that particular trip. One of the things you can do at one of the ports is to get off and get on a little boat and see icebergs. But the excursion had been filled. I already had a ticket, so they had to do something for me. Well, they put us on an even smaller boat with a very special garment, furs from top to bottom, a hat. Why? It was going to be very cold, and there was absolutely no shelter on this little boat. And here I was, just myself and my husband, and one little tiny lady. I'm 5 feet tall, and I towered above her. She was about my age, from Japan. Well, we got on this boat, and it wasn't so easy. We were on the coldest ice that you can imagine, heading for icebergs. And here's what happened. Seeing anything like this in my life, I am so close up to an iceberg that I could actually, in 2 seconds, I'll be able to touch it. I'm there. Oh, you felt the bump? Yep, I just bumped into an iceberg.
You're allowed to touch it?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Oh, I'm going to touch it. From that moment on, I began to think of myself as an adventurer. And when I took a look at what kind of adventurers there are, I found out that there were 4 big reasons that people adventure: curiosity, excitement, challenge, and storytelling. Now, then sit back for a minute and think of an adventurer. Think of yourself on an adventure that's made a difference to you. What's going on? Where is it taking place? What are you wearing? Think for a moment the nature of that adventure, because we're going to pull out that vision throughout the next 40 minutes or so of our podcast. Now, you've envisioned yourself as an adventurer, and if it happens to be that that vision was someplace exotic, someplace hard to reach, someplace mysterious, maybe a jungle adventurer or a safari, then maybe you're one of those types of adventurers where curiosity is your motivation. And let's meet some adventurers where curiosity is indeed their motivation. These are the free walkers. These are folks that I have known for about I don't know, 15 years now. And its leader, Risa Olinsky, wow, almost 30 years. These are folks that walk long distances. That's their adventure. I have walked with them more than once on the 50-mile, that's right, 50 miles in one day adventure. It's called the Kennedy Walk along the Potomac. What an adventure. People are curious to see what it would be like to walk for that length of time. What would happen to their bodies, their minds? Well, they go into meditation very often. I certainly did. But there's another kind of adventure, an adventure that we have covered many times on this show, and that is Camino. People go on that type of adventure for spiritual curiosity, to find out what it's really like to walk up to 600 miles. We did 120 miles with free walkers in a 6-day period. Now, another wonderful adventure that I have covered more than once on our articles and also in our podcast is trekking adventures. Now, recently, we've talked about Uganda more than once. There's not only the gorillas, which is, I guess, the primary primate experience in Uganda, but I enjoyed just as much, if not even more, the Kambali National Park, where I trekked to see chimpanzees that are honestly faster, more difficult, more of an adventure to find, more of an adventure to spot, and more of an adventure to maintain your relationship with them, because the great silverbacks are a little slow like you and me. They sit, they watch you, you watch them. But the chimps, they are running around everywhere. These trekking adventures are amazing. And you might say to yourself, I can't do it. I don't have the mobility to do it. Well, let me introduce you to an adventurer, Leah Lane. She gorilla trekked in her 80s, and she did it, well, with the help of a few helpful strangers. Let's hear her story.
Experiences. I had always wanted to go there, and I thought it was too late because I was turning 80. And I thought, oh, well, that is one thing I can't do. And then when I was, I think, 78 or 79, I looked up, and this is a good tip, keep looking because you're going to find things you can't imagine. I found that you can be assisted if you are disabled or unable to walk or older. You can be taken up to the gorillas and see them. And I was so excited. I looked into this. And what they do is they take you up to the place where the gorillas are, and then you spend an hour with everyone else.
This is what I mean by anybody can be an adventurer, 8 or 82. These are trekking adventures that people go to of all ages, if they are willing to take assistance. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later. But first, let's take a little bit of a break. Let's get a special message. When we come back, I want to introduce you to an accidental adventurer. If you take long trips or travel through different climate zones the way I do, you don't want to schlep a lot of luggage. Well, luggage-free ships to many of the hotels in the world and mostly all the cruise ships. I've been recommending luggage-free for years to my friends and family, and I always hear the best rave reviews. So you visit agelesstraveler.com, products and services, to access luggage-free, get all the information, and stop schlepping. Sometimes curiosity is the catalyst for an adventure because you're curious about something outside yourself. But sometimes it is the catalyst of an adventure because you're curious about something inside yourself. Now, there's a woman named Heidi. You may have heard her on our podcast because I interviewed her on her book about bicycling across America. But she is what I would call an accidental adventurer. Things weren't going so well for Heidi, and she had to do a report. She didn't know what she wanted to do it on, and her mom suggested that she go to a meeting actually in Washington, D.C., but she was in Oregon at that time. And the one thing she did love about her life was her bicycle. She loved bicycling, and she decided to bicycle across America. Let's hear from Heidi.
That sounds like an amazing idea, actually. And I started to turn it into a project, and it became the basis of my research for my master's program. And I had a journey beyond my wildest imagination in terms of just coming to know myself and my country. And that's what the memoir is about.
So you might be motivated, not just by something you want to see, but by something or someone that you would like to become. And that's what's so great about the human brain. The human brain can definitely keep us back. But when we are in novel environments, when we're on vacation, we change. And we change because people don't know who we are. They look at us in a different way. They want to learn about us. And so we can present ourselves in a variety of different ways. We can present ourselves as an adventurer, and then we become that. But one of the reasons that people love adventure, of course, is excitement. So when I asked you to envision yourself as an adventurer, well, if you were climbing a mountain, if you were getting an adrenaline rush, if you were bungee jumping or skydiving from a plane, or like another podcast interview I had with the famous Diana Nyad, who at age 64, she swam from Cuba to Florida without a shark cage. One of the only people to ever do it. It was a 110-mile journey. It took her 53 hours and multiple attempts. But she never gave up because she was an adventurer who was interested in excitement. Now, why do people want to adventure, even if it's dangerous? Well, when you're on vacation and you do something out of the ordinary that has a little bit of fear element to it or a challenge element to it, your brain reward system actually changes. On vacation, your mind can be filled with the chemistry of dopamine. If you don't know what that is, it's called the happy chemical. And it rewards regions of the brain, particularly when you're in a new environment. So you may want to do things that you never thought you ever wanted to do before or even considered. One of them might be climbing. So take a listen to one of our travel bros. And if you don't know, on this podcast series, we have a wonderful group of podcasts from men who travel. Many of them are what I call the ordinary adventurers, and many of the adventures they have is climbing. We've had Kilimanjaro more than once. We've had Yosemite and many more places, of course, the Grand Canyon. But this particular adventure ended up with a little bit of danger. Take a listen.
We had an electrical storm. This is a stone hut. I'm telling you, you could see the light from the lightning coming through the stone. It was so horrible. All the other guides, everybody was so sullen. Anyway, none of this was adding to my comfort doing this thing, which was unlike anything I'd ever done before.
Now, you may think that climbing something like Kilimanjaro or Mount Fuji is impossible for you. Well, there is something called the Via Ferrata. And just recently in Utah, in our own great USA, I was able to visit Via Ferrata. If you don't know what they are, it started in Italy. It stands for Iron Way, and they are actually iron rods that are put into mountains for people who cannot climb mountains. And there's a wonderful video which explains it exactly, which I will certainly give you the link in the show notes for the Via Ferrata, but you will find them all over the world. So if you've always dreamed of being able to climb a mountain, but you didn't think you were physically able, while this does require mobility, and it does require getting over any fear of heights you might have, which we'll talk about later again, it doesn't require the kind of stamina, the kind of footwork, the kind of cardiac power that you need to mountain climb or even to hike. But if you can climb ladders, you can climb the Via Ferrata, which leads me to another kind of wonderful adventure, very exciting adventure that actually requires no physicality at all. Wait a minute, Adrian, that's not possible, you might say. There's an adventure where I can just kind of sit down. Yeah, there is. Two of my favorite world adventures have to do with boating to and behind waterfalls. One, Murchison Falls, and my favorite, I have to say, Iguazu Falls, whether you're on the Brazilian side or the Argentinian side. Now, I want you to listen for just a minute because I couldn't resist this sound effect. This is an actual sound that we took this August in Uganda at Murchison Falls, one of the highest waterfalls in the world, which we did walk to. But we also took a boat, sitting in a boat, going toward the falls, having somebody else bring you there. And as we are going down the river, what do we see? Hippopotami coming out. It was almost like the Jungle Cruise, exactly like the Jungle Cruise of Disney. But listen to what this waterfall sounds like. The sound itself is excitement. Now, Iguazu is very, very different. Iguazu Falls is a major world attraction. In Murchison Falls, Uganda, we still have a small number of people. If 20 people are in your boat, that's quite a lot. Iguazu Falls, everybody gets into a boat that has several dozen folks, and they take you right behind the falls. You really feel like you're going to crash into those falls. And for those of you who like Niagara, there's nothing better than the walkway in Niagara Falls. These are great adventures that you can do with very little mobility, as long as you can get in the boat and get out of the boat. Doesn't matter what you're doing in the boat, you can simply sit there. So this is what I mean by anyone can be an adventurer. But what if you'd like a challenge? What if you'd like to be the kind of adventurer that gets out of their comfort zone? Now, for those of you who have subscribed to our newsletter, you know that this week's Travel Tuesday newsletter, which is always free of charge to you, actually covers the issue of comfort zone. So let's take a little bit of a break so that you can rush and subscribe to our Travel Tuesday newsletter right now. Tell you how to do it. Don't you guys go anywhere. To become and stay an Ageless Traveler, subscribe to our free weekly newsletter, Travel Tuesday. Just visit agelesstraveler.com, click subscribe, and enter your name and email for a surprise gift. What's the surprise? Well, if I tell you, it's not a surprise. What I can say is that Travel Tuesday tackles travel barriers like money, health, companionship, and even travel burnout, and gives you a taste of what our blog and podcast have to offer every single week, helping you explore the world effortlessly. And now we're back, and we're talking about adventuring, and not only looking at some of the great adventures of the world, like gorilla trekking, of course, like mountain climbing, like Kilimanjaro, but we're also looking at the psychology of becoming an adventurer, whether it's for curiosity or excitement. And now we're looking at adventuring for a challenge, because we know something. We know that the bigger the why, the bigger the reason you have for becoming an adventurer, the easier it will be. The aphorism is the bigger the why, the easier the how. And indeed, that is true. So if you're interested in a challenge, that's a big why. And one of the interesting things about challenge yourself on vacation is, again, you are rewiring your brain chemistry. You are rewiring the pathways of the brain. Did you know that little by little, by doing something that's difficult for you over and over again, it becomes easy? That's the way we learn, of course, but it's also the way we feel. We feel more adventurous as we act more adventuresome. And why? It's not just a feeling. It's really cognitive. We begin to trust ourselves more. We don't have those outside restraints. We throw them off. We're rewiring our brain little by little from inability to confidence. And there has been wonderful NIH studies and National Institute of Aging studies, health studies here and in the UK, that talks about something called self-imposed helplessness. As we get older, people tell us and see us as more helpless. And eventually we impose it on ourselves. We just assume out of hand, without ever trying, that we can't do it. But if we adventure on vacation, our self-image shifts. We have these little victories that occur that really make a difference in our own way of thinking about who we are. So I want to tell you about 3 real adventures that I've had that have made a difference in my life because they were not only a challenge, but I accepted assistance. One is underwater swimming. Now, scuba diving is so important for many people. They do it very easily. They began to swim when they were kids. But there are some people, and I'm one of them, that actually never learned to swim properly. And yet I've walked on the bottom of the ocean. I have swam at the bottom of the ocean with the assistance of very special helmets. I don't know whether or not you've ever seen them. They're readily available in most places in the Caribbean, but all over different parts of the world where looking at exotic fish is one of the great draws of travel. And these helmets are individual. You put one on. You do not have a tank on your back, but you do have oxygen coming in at all times. It makes it very easy. You're almost in your own little submarine. Another type of assistance that I like, because I'm a hiker and I don't want to fall, and I'm not great at downhill walking, is what I call the famous butt move. Don't be ashamed if you can't adventure like everybody else if you're in a group. And this is something that took me a long time to learn. I'll tell you a story about how I learned it in a minute. But I have gone on horse group rides where one of the guides actually had a rope and held that rope so I wasn't afraid of maneuvering the horse. I have slid down rock by rock on the famous butt move, everywhere from Greece to around the corner here in Palm Springs, because I learned that if you can do it, it doesn't matter how you do it. And here's my story. I took a course actually in speaking, and the group was called the Millionaire Mind, and they did a lot of little interesting activities. One of them was they asked everybody in the group, and there was almost 400 people in that classroom, to break a board the way you have seen with Kung Fu, with the side of your hand. And I couldn't do it. I tried about 6 or 7 times, and every time I did it, I hurt the side of my hand, and the board didn't break. So I got angry. I took the board, and right when we were asked to come back to our seat, I threw it on the ground. I did it with a chuckle, but I did it. And guess what happened? The board broke. Well, it wasn't me. It was the ground and my activity of throwing the board down. Got onto my seat, and the instructor said, raise your hand if you broke the board. And of course, I did not raise my hand because I didn't break it with a Kung Fu move. Then the instructor looked around and looked at me and said, wait a minute, your board is on your lap and it's broken. How come you didn't raise your hand? And I said, because I did it the wrong way. I didn't do it the way I was instructed. And the very insightful instructor said, I didn't ask you how you did it. I asked you if you did it. Well, I don't care if I have to use a butt move, a helmet, or a rope to get down to the places where I want to adventure. But there was a time that I would have been embarrassed to do it that way. There are so many ways if you are willing to become an adventurer. And here's the good part. It doesn't matter that you've done it that way. These little victories will still take place. And eventually, it'll be easier for you. Well, one of the things I always wanted to do, of course, was scuba dive. But I couldn't. Recently in Honduras, I met up with something called a transparent boat. Now, this was for kids, but I took that boat. Here's some of the kids enjoying what they're seeing. This boat is completely made of glass. And so even if you can't snorkel or scuba dive, you can easily see all the wonderful aquatic life below the surface.
I bet you could see, I bet you're seeing great stuff right now, Ron. I saw a little fish. Yeah. Oh, little big fish. I saw big fish. Little fishes, I can see that.
And now, before we go on to our last reason that people adventure, and I have to be honest with you, it's my number one reason. Yes, I'm very curious. Yes, I love excitement. Yes, I accept a challenge. But why do I really travel so much? Why do I really adventure so much? Because a story goes with it. We'll talk about that in a moment. And if you not only envisioned yourself as an adventurer, but an adventurer who comes back and shows pictures and tells stories, you're going to love this type of adventuring. Don't you go anywhere. One of the things that you've told me over and over again is that your biggest barrier to travel is money. What else is new? Well, we have now affiliated and partnered with all the booking sites that you would be interested in. That's booking.com, that's hotels.com, that's Expedia, that's guides, get your guide, and of course, TripAdvisor, the big one. So if you are going to be booking, you're going to want to use the links that we provide for you because there are discounts there. There's also ease and convenience. It also does something for all of us. It is true, yes, I get a small donation in the event that you book through any of these sites, but I plow it right back in so that we can have more research, more clout in the world of anti-ageism and tourism, and get you even more discounts. So please use these because it'll be good for you and it'll be good for your family. And it really puts a lot more money in your pocket and makes life easy. How do you do that? Well, you simply go to our discount page on agelesstraveler.com/discounts. You'll see that also in the show notes. So use it and never stop traveling. And now we're back and we're finishing up our little litany of ways that you can become an adventurer and reasons to become an adventurer. But I want to talk to you for a moment before I tell you my personal story about an adventure, about something called situational attribution. It's a real long word, situational attribution. This is what happens. You go on vacation and something new occurs. Could be a new food. Somebody's offering you a new food. I'm always thinking about the movie Lawrence of Arabia, where he's presented with eyeballs at one of the dinners in an Arabian tent. And you do it. You eat it. You do eat termites. You do eat turtle soup. Or you go on an adventure. You climb higher than you expected. You go on an off-the-road vehicle, something you wouldn't necessarily do at home. And then you say, the only reason I did it was I was on vacation. That's called situational attribution. You are attributing what you're doing to the situation that you're in. There are many iterations of that, but on vacation happens a lot. You know what? Try not to do that. Why? Because it's not just vacation. You're also there. Wherever you go, there you are. So someplace in you is an adventurer. It's not just because you happen to be on vacation. But it is wonderful if you do go on vacation and you do something new. Now, I'm going to pause a moment so that you can hear two girls in one of the most beautiful parts of Vietnam, that Halong Bay. It's very famous. It's very beautiful. But they've never kayaked before. Listen to the joy in their voice.
End up with a whole different perspective on this magical place.
It's amazing to be out here in the incredible, like it's like green glass.
Now, I hope they don't come back and say, gee, the only reason I kayaked was that I was in Vietnam, because there's so much kayaking available everywhere. Now, even in New York City and other big cities, you can kayak right on the Hudson River if that's what you would like to do. So I hope that you bring home some of the extraordinary experiences you've had and you try them at home if they're available. But here's something that is not available at home. It's my story. I was privileged to go to Dutch Harbor. For those of you who don't know where Dutch Harbor is, it's off the coast of Alaska. It is an island. It was very prominent in the Pacific in World War II. And today it was the site of a television series called The Deadliest Catch. And it is one of the major places for frozen fish processing. Now, why was I in Dutch Harbor? I was actually in Dutch Harbor on my way to another island in the Aleutian Islands called Nikolsky, a little bit closer to Russia, but a U.S. island. And to get there, you have to instrument fly. Once I got there, I was stuck there for 2 weeks when I was supposed to be there for 10 days because of the weather. Now, this wouldn't have been so bad, except that we were running out of food. And more importantly, we had already run out of wine. So, I wanted to get off the island. But more important than that, I had to be in Texas in order to present a speech. And I was being well paid for that speech, and I couldn't miss it. So I was stuck because they could not instrument fly me out to Dutch Harbor, and then from there to Anchorage, and then from there to Texas. That was my route. What happened was that a young man said to me, I have a fishing boat, and I can take this fishing boat down the Bering Sea. Yes, indeed, the Bering Sea, and bring you to Dutch Harbor, I think, in time for you to catch a regular plane to go back to the mainland. I said, fine, no problem at all. Well, it was a freezing cold, tiny little boat. It was navigated by radar. It was really just a small fishing boat. As I got through the evening, we passed rookeries. We were surrounded by dolphins and whales. We had sea mammals jumping off the rocks right in front of us. And it became what honestly I felt was a hallucination. It seemed so imaginary, so impossible to be all by myself under this sky, in the dark, on the Bering Sea, with sea animals and creatures of every type surrounding me, almost as if we were communicating in some way. It was an incredible adventure, probably the number one of my entire, now almost more than 60 years of travel. So you never know when you need to accept a challenge. So it really is worthwhile whether you take the first step in a walking challenge or you decide, like President Bush did, I'm going to jump out of an airplane for my birthday. All of this counts as to who you are and who you become at any age. Now, one of the things I enjoy now, putting it all together as an adventure, is splunking. Don't know if you know what that is, but splunking means inspecting and walking in caves. I love the discovery of the beautiful cave formations, and probably one of the most wonderful experiences of adventure in the world is to go where they found the first humanoids in Africa. It happens to be about an hour and a half away from Johannesburg in South Africa. And it's a wonderful splunking experience. But the great caves of the United States are also terrific places to adventure. So when you think about adventure, you don't only have to think about climbing mountains, swimming oceans, or taking on challenges. Getting underground is a wonderful adventure too. Now, as we conclude, we have to think to ourselves, what are you afraid of? Now, some people will answer nothing. Some people will say heights. Some people will say the ocean. Some people will say something like spiders, snakes. Some of it is rational. Some of it is not. But let's talk about the fear. Because sometimes you do have to know a bit about fear to be the kind of adventurer you would like to be. The way fear works is pretty primitive. There's part of the brain called the amygdala, and it detects threats. Some of these threats are not real. For example, we still have that fight-flight response that we had as primitive man. But once the amygdala, whether real or imagined, detects a threat, another part of the brain comes into action called the hippocampus. And it encodes where that threat is coming, when that threat may happen. And it makes the fear pretty specific, whether real or not, and it does seem real. So what can we do about it? Well, there is actually something that really does interfere with fear, and that is joy and happiness. Many studies show, and there's a wonderful book about it called What Happy People Know by Dan Baxter, and that'll be in the show notes, prove that you cannot have joy or deep appreciation or gratitude, these good, deep feelings, and fear at the same time. They're just incompatible. So if you find yourself on vacation and you find yourself filled with adventure, curiosity, excitement, challenge, and joy, it's very likely that you will diminish or even disappear your fears. And I finish with this. Where does fear come from? Well, it can come from innate instincts, like the fear of falling that you might have if you are climbing a mountain. It can come from a past trauma, an actual accident that you might have. But more than any other place it comes from is other people, your family, your culture that told you, don't fall, don't ice skate, you could hurt yourself. And as you get older, more and more people closer and further from you begin to be negative about you and instill fear in you. You will get that osteoporosis report that says if you fall within the next 10 years, you will definitely break a hip. And it's downhill all the way from there. Well, you can process all of this as a trigger to the amygdala, or you can step back and notice that that fear is coming from other people. It could also be coming from the television. All the ads that are directed to us at our age are fear ads. If you don't believe me, watch TV for half an hour and you'll see. It's all true. We are the targets for fear. I have fallen and I can't get up. How many times and how many ways are we told that? Well, the fact is, that takes a little bit of a work to not listen. It takes a little bit of a work to ignore that. I have a little saying, and maybe as we end, this will be a wonderful saying for you to put in your pocket. I even have mine on the side of a tote bag. Will all of the people who say it can't be done get out of the way of the people who are doing it? So this is the Ageless Traveler. Take a look at our show notes. You've got lots of information about how to go on all of the types of adventures we've talked about and the books that you could read to overcome fear. It's one of the most important ways that you can start 2026 because anyone can become an adventurer. And to work more closely with me, to ask me questions, you simply have to go to Ask Adrian, also on our show notes. You can ask me questions. I will always answer them. You can join our Facebook salon. You'll find out exactly how on our show notes here. And of course, perhaps the number one thing to do is to subscribe to our free weekly newsletter, Travel Tuesday. Do it right now. You will find the direct link right on our show notes. You know what I'm going to say? Never stop traveling.